What if protecting your peace begins with one simple word, no? Many people exhaust themselves because they constantly ignore their own limits. They say yes when they desperately want to say no. They accept disrespect because confrontation feels more frightening than silence. They carry other people's emotions while abandoning their own needs. Eventually, this constant giving creates exhaustion, resentment, anxiety, and emotional distance. But protecting your emotional health does not make you selfish. In fact, healthy boundaries can completely transform your relationships and confidence. A boundary is simply a clear limit around what feels acceptable. It tells others where your responsibility ends and theirs begins. Without boundaries, relationships can slowly become emotionally draining and unbalanced. You may start feeling responsible for everyone's happiness except your own. You might answer messages immediately, even when completely overwhelmed. You might tolerate criticism because you fear disappointing someone important. You might keep explaining yourself, hoping others finally understand your feelings. But constantly explaining your boundaries can become another form of exhaustion. Healthy boundaries don't require endless arguments, dramatic confrontations, or complicated explanations. Sometimes, protecting yourself simply means communicating your limits calmly. The first step begins with recognizing where your emotional energy disappears. Notice which conversations repeatedly leave you feeling guilty, drained, or uncomfortable. Pay attention to people who constantly demand more than you offer. Notice situations where saying yes creates immediate tension inside you. Your emotional reactions often reveal boundaries that need stronger protection. Feeling resentment can signal that you're repeatedly giving without receiving. Feeling anxiety may indicate that someone's behavior crosses your comfort zone. Feeling exhaustion can reveal that you've accepted too much responsibility. These feelings aren't weaknesses that should simply be ignored. They can become valuable signals, showing where change becomes necessary. Start observing these signals instead of immediately pushing them away. Ask yourself what specifically caused your emotional discomfort today. Then ask whether that situation repeatedly happens with the same person. Patterns are especially important because repeated discomfort rarely happens accidentally. Once you recognize patterns, you can begin identifying your personal boundaries. Your boundaries might involve time, communication, privacy, money, or emotional availability. They might involve physical space, personal decisions, work responsibilities, or relationships. Everyone has different limits because everyone has different emotional needs. A boundary that feels reasonable for you may feel different elsewhere. That doesn't make your boundary unreasonable or unnecessarily demanding. Your needs deserve consideration even when others disagree with them. However, boundaries aren't tools for controlling another person's behavior. You cannot force someone to change simply because you dislike their actions. Instead, boundaries clarify what you will personally accept or tolerate. This distinction makes boundaries healthier, clearer, and much more powerful. For example, you cannot control whether someone raises their voice, but you can decide what you will do when they yell. You might calmly say you'll continue talking after everyone becomes calmer. Then you can actually leave the conversation if yelling continues. That's a boundary because you're controlling your response, not theirs. Another powerful boundary involves protecting your personal time. Constant availability can quietly teach people to expect unlimited access. You don't need to respond instantly whenever someone contacts you. You are allowed to have moments when you remain completely unavailable. Turning off notifications can sometimes protect your mind better than explanations. Saying, "I'll respond tomorrow," can be healthier than forcing immediate replies. Your availability should not become an unlimited emotional resource for everyone. Remember, being kind doesn't require sacrificing your emotional stability. You can care deeply about someone without solving every problem. You can support people without becoming responsible for their emotions. You can love someone while still maintaining healthy personal distance. These truths may feel uncomfortable when you're accustomed to overgiving. At first, setting boundaries might even make you feel guilty. That guilt doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong. Once you recognize your limits, the next challenge is communicating them clearly. Many people understand their boundaries but struggle to express them. They fear sounding rude, demanding, difficult, or emotionally unavailable, so instead they stay silent and quietly accumulate frustration. Eventually, that frustration may explode through anger, withdrawal, or resentment. Healthy communication prevents boundaries from becoming hidden emotional pressure. The key is expressing your needs without attacking another person's character. Instead of blaming, describe what you need and why. Simple language often makes difficult conversations surprisingly easier. You don't need a long speech to establish a boundary. You don't need to defend every decision with complicated explanations. A clear sentence can communicate your limit effectively. For example, say, "I can't discuss this right now." Another option is, "I need some time before continuing." These statements communicate limits without creating unnecessary conflict. When communicating boundaries, focus on your actions and responsibilities. Avoid making threats that you have no intention of enforcing. Empty threats can weaken your credibility and create additional tension. Instead, calmly explain what you will do if necessary. For example, you might say you'll leave disrespectful conversations, then follow through consistently when that situation actually happens. Consistency teaches people that your boundaries are genuine. Without consistency, people may assume your limits can eventually disappear. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or emotionally distant. Healthy boundaries can remain flexible when circumstances genuinely require flexibility. The difference is choosing flexibility instead of feeling forced. You should be able to adjust boundaries without abandoning yourself. Another important skill is learning to say no without over-explaining. Many people believe every refusal requires an elaborate justification. They provide excuses because direct honesty feels uncomfortable. But excessive explanations can invite unnecessary negotiation or pressure. Sometimes, "No, I can't do that," is completely sufficient. You can remain respectful without turning your decision into a debate. If someone repeatedly pushes, calmly repeat your original answer. This technique prevents conversations from becoming endless emotional negotiations. Remember that other people's disappointment doesn't automatically mean you failed. Someone can feel unhappy while your decision remains completely reasonable. Their emotional reaction belongs to them, not entirely to you. This realization becomes especially important for people who constantly seek approval. Approval can feel comforting, but it cannot become your emotional compass. If every decision depends on someone's reaction, your freedom becomes limited. Healthy boundaries require accepting that some people may misunderstand you. They may call you selfish because your behavior has changed. They may become frustrated because your previous availability disappeared. They may even accuse you of becoming cold or distant. Don't automatically abandon your boundary because someone dislikes it. Instead, calmly evaluate whether the boundary remains fair and necessary. If it does, allow others time to adjust. People often resist boundaries because boundaries change established relationship patterns. Someone accustomed to constant access may dislike your new limits. Someone accustomed to emotional rescuing may demand your attention. Someone accustomed to controlling decisions may challenge your independence. Their resistance doesn't automatically make your boundary unhealthy. Sometimes resistance simply reveals how necessary the boundary actually became. However, healthy boundaries should still include respect and reasonable communication. Boundaries aren't excuses for punishment, manipulation, or emotional revenge. Ignoring someone deliberately to create fear isn't healthy boundary setting. Using silence to control another person's emotions isn't healthy either. The goal should always remain clarity, safety, and mutual respect. When boundaries are communicated calmly, relationships can become more balanced. People finally understand what you need and what you cannot provide. You also become more aware of your own emotional responsibilities. Over time, this awareness can dramatically improve your confidence. You stop constantly questioning whether your needs are legitimate. You begin trusting yourself enough to protect your emotional space. The next step is learning how to maintain boundaries under pressure. Setting a boundary once doesn't guarantee everyone will respect it. Some people may test your limits repeatedly to see what happens. Others may challenge your decision through guilt, anger, or emotional pressure. This is where consistency becomes more important than perfect communication. You don't need perfect words when protecting your emotional well-being. You simply need to remain clear about what you can accept. When someone pressures you, avoid immediately defending your entire decision. Take a breath and return to your original boundary. You can calmly repeat yourself without becoming emotionally aggressive. Repetition can be powerful when someone refuses to accept your answer. For example, simply say, "I understand, but my decision remains." This communicates firmness without inviting another unnecessary argument. Another important skill is recognizing emotional manipulation. Manipulation often makes you question reasonable limits through guilt. Someone might say you're selfish for protecting your personal time. Someone might claim you don't care because you refuse their request. These statements can trigger old habits of over-explaining and apologizing. Before reacting, pause and ask what actually belongs to you. Are you responsible for their feelings or only your behavior? That question can completely change how you handle difficult conversations. You can acknowledge someone's feelings without accepting unfair responsibility. Saying, "I understand you're disappointed," doesn't mean changing your decision. Empathy and boundaries can exist together without creating emotional conflict. This is one of the most important lessons about boundaries. You don't have to become cold to become emotionally protected. You can remain compassionate while becoming much more selective. Another challenge appears when boundaries involve close family members. Family relationships often contain years of expectations, habits, and emotional patterns. Because of that history, changing your behavior may feel extremely difficult. Relatives may remember the version of you who always agreed. They may expect immediate help because you've provided it before. Changing that pattern requires patience, clarity, and consistent action. You don't need to completely disconnect from people to create boundaries. Sometimes you simply need shorter conversations or fewer commitments. You might choose specific times for calls instead of constant availability. You might stop discussing deeply personal decisions with certain relatives. You might politely refuse requests that repeatedly overwhelm you. Small changes can create significant emotional protection over time. Boundaries also matter greatly in friendships. Healthy friendship should allow honesty without requiring constant emotional availability. You shouldn't feel obligated to respond every moment. You shouldn't have to accept disrespect because you've known someone for years. Friendship history doesn't erase your right to emotional safety. If someone repeatedly violates your boundaries, observe their response. Respectful friends may feel surprised, but eventually adjust their behavior. Consistently disrespectful people may continue pushing against your limits. Their repeated behavior provides valuable information about the relationship. Sometimes, boundaries reveal which relationships are genuinely healthy. They can expose connections built around convenience rather than mutual respect. This realization may hurt, but it can also create freedom. You don't need every relationship to remain exactly the same forever. People change, circumstances change, and emotional needs change too. Your boundaries may therefore evolve throughout different stages of life. What worked years ago might no longer protect your well-being. That's completely normal and doesn't mean you've become difficult. Growth often requires updating the rules surrounding your emotional energy. Another powerful boundary involves protecting your privacy. You don't owe everyone access to your personal thoughts. You can decide which experiences remain private and which become shared. Oversharing can sometimes create vulnerability before genuine trust develops. Take time to understand who has earned deeper access. Trust should develop gradually through consistent respect and reliability. Your private life doesn't need constant explanation or public approval. Protecting your privacy can become one of your strongest emotional boundaries. Another powerful boundary involves protecting your energy from constant negativity. Some conversations repeatedly leave you feeling anxious, hopeless, or emotionally exhausted. You don't have to participate in every negative conversation around you. Sometimes, changing the subject can protect your emotional state. Other times, stepping away may be the healthiest response. This becomes especially important when negativity becomes someone's daily communication pattern. Listening occasionally is compassionate, but constant emotional dumping becomes draining. You can care about someone's struggles without becoming their emotional container. Try saying, "I care about you, but I can't discuss this tonight." That sentence creates compassion while protecting your emotional capacity. Workplaces also require strong boundaries because professional pressure can follow you home. Constantly checking work messages can prevent your mind from genuinely recovering. Unless necessary, create clear periods when work completely stops. Your brain needs recovery time, just like your body needs rest. Being constantly available doesn't necessarily make you more productive. In many cases, uninterrupted recovery can improve focus and performance. You should also recognize when coworkers repeatedly transfer their responsibilities. Helping occasionally is generous, but becoming everyone's backup isn't sustainable. Learn to distinguish teamwork from repeatedly carrying someone else's workload. If responsibilities become unfair, communicate the problem early. Waiting until resentment builds can make the eventual conversation much harder. Clear boundaries can prevent small frustrations from becoming major conflicts. Digital communication creates another important area for emotional boundaries. Social media can expose you to endless opinions, arguments, and comparisons. You don't need to consume everything appearing on your screen. Unfollowing accounts can sometimes protect your mental space significantly. Muting conversations can reduce unnecessary emotional stimulation without creating confrontation. Taking regular digital breaks can also restore your attention and calmness. Remember, access to information doesn't mean constant access is healthy. Your attention is valuable, so spend it intentionally. Emotional boundaries also involve recognizing when you need solitude. Wanting quiet time doesn't mean you dislike everyone around you. Solitude can help you process emotions without outside pressure. Give yourself permission to pause before responding to difficult situations. A delayed response is often better than an emotionally reactive response. When emotions become intense, create distance before making important decisions. This pause gives your nervous system time to settle. You may discover that the situation feels different after calming down. Another essential boundary involves protecting your personal values. Sometimes people pressure you into choices that conflict with your principles. You might agree simply because everyone else seems comfortable, but repeatedly betraying your values can damage your self-respect. Boundaries become stronger when they reflect what genuinely matters. Ask yourself which behaviors you simply cannot accept anymore. Then identify what action you'll take when those behaviors appear. This creates boundaries based on principles rather than temporary emotions. It's also important to forgive yourself when boundaries aren't perfect. You may sometimes say yes when you intended to refuse. You may realize afterward that something made you uncomfortable. Instead of criticizing yourself, treat the experience as useful information. Every uncomfortable interaction can teach you something about your limits. You can adjust your response the next time. Progress comes from practicing boundaries repeatedly, not performing perfectly. Over time, saying no becomes less frightening and more natural. You begin noticing your needs before reaching emotional exhaustion. You recognize unhealthy patterns earlier instead of tolerating them indefinitely. Your relationships may become smaller, but often become healthier. You may discover that genuine connection doesn't require constant sacrifice. People who respect you won't require unlimited access to prove loyalty. They will understand that your well-being matters too. Healthy boundaries create space for relationships built around mutual respect. They allow kindness without creating dependency or emotional exhaustion. They protect your time without eliminating generosity. They protect your privacy without
Ultimately, boundaries are about creating a healthier relationship with yourself. They teach you that your needs deserve attention and respect. They remind you that emotional peace shouldn't always come last. When you protect your limits, your relationships can become more authentic. You stop pretending everything feels fine when something actually hurts. You become more honest about what you can realistically handle. That honesty can create deeper connections with people who truly care. Healthy relationships don't require constant self abandonment to survive. They create room for both people to have needs. They allow disagreements without destroying emotional safety or mutual respect. If someone becomes angry whenever you set reasonable limits, pay attention. Their reaction may reveal something important about the relationship. Respectful people might disagree, but they can still respect your choice. Healthy boundaries therefore become a powerful relationship filter over time. They help you recognize who respects your humanity and individuality. They also help you recognize relationships built around control or convenience. But remember, boundaries aren't meant to punish anyone. They're meant to protect what allows you to remain emotionally healthy. The strongest boundary begins with knowing what you genuinely need. Maybe you need uninterrupted mornings without messages or unexpected demands. Maybe you need respectful communication during disagreements with loved ones. Maybe you need private time without explaining every personal decision. Maybe you need permission to rest without feeling guilty. Whatever your needs are, don't dismiss them automatically. Your emotional health deserves the same attention as your responsibilities. Start with one boundary instead of changing everything overnight. Choose the situation that repeatedly drains your energy the most. Identify what feels uncomfortable, unfair, intrusive, or emotionally exhausting. Then decide what healthier behavior you want instead. Communicate that boundary using simple, direct, respectful language. Don't apologize simply for having a reasonable emotional need. Expect some discomfort because unfamiliar behavior often feels emotionally strange. Expect others to need time while adjusting to your changes. Most importantly, remain consistent when your boundary is genuinely necessary. If someone crosses it, respond according to your stated limit. Avoid becoming aggressive simply because someone ignored your boundary. Calm consistency usually communicates more strength than emotional confrontation. Over time, your boundaries become easier because trust in yourself grows. You learn that disappointing someone isn't the same as hurting them. You learn that saying no doesn't make you unkind. You learn that rest isn't something you must earn. You learn that privacy doesn't require secrecy or shame. You learn that emotional distance can sometimes create healthier connection. Most importantly, you learn that protecting yourself isn't selfish. It becomes an act of self-respect, awareness, and emotional responsibility. Your peace matters even when other people don't immediately understand. Your time matters even when someone wants more. Your energy matters even when someone expects constant availability. Your feelings matter even when someone disagrees with them. Your limits matter even when someone tries testing them. Boundaries don't build walls around your heart forever. Instead, they create doors that you control opening. They help you choose who receives your energy and trust. They allow relationships to grow without consuming your entire identity. They create breathing room where genuine connection can develop naturally. So begin today by noticing one place you feel drained. Ask yourself what boundary could protect you in that situation. Then communicate it clearly, calmly, and without unnecessary guilt. You don't need everyone's permission to protect your well-being. You simply need enough courage to honor your own needs. Some people may leave when your boundaries become stronger. Others may finally learn how to respect you properly. Both outcomes can teach you something valuable about relationships. The goal isn't keeping everyone happy at your expense. The goal is building a life where peace, respect, and connection coexist.